Thank you, Mr. Kumar. So we're going to begin. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the home and traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Harvey Diamond. I'm chairing this meeting. With me today is Lynn Nesbitt and Lori Davidson. And the City Assessment Department is represented by Darren Ducharme. Our administrative assistant is Jaswinder Kumar. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will be limiting discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing must be sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to a matter will first be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decision on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or to classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should you wish to appeal, information how to do so will be included with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessment testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by any questions. Each side will be given an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so, in which case they should ask for that privilege. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You receive the Board's decision by written mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will form part of a public record. Today we'll be hearing items 1 through 8. And Mr. Kumar, you can please swear in the parties at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sasser, please state your full name.
Darren Ducharme.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so prior to calling the first item, I note, I'm sure that we've all prepared for this, so we know the evidence. And it comes down to, in some way, a lot of instances, just cap rate, whether it should be a 4.5% or a 5% cap. And that seems to be the only difference between you. In other cases, in all cases, it seems the city is looking at the highest and best use, in which case, I guess, if we're going to use that, we have market values of properties of similar size and location and the sell prices. So that's been put forward. But I guess it comes down to establishing that we should go with highest and best use. So I'd like you, when you're directing to us, to look at those items, because that's ultimately what our decision is going to come down to. So try to address those. We'll ask questions if we have any, obviously. And with that said, our first item then would be 365 William Avenue. And Mr. Ducharme, you can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. The file number is 22-3006. The roll number is 130-701-45800. The address is 365 William Avenue. For the roll year 2023, with a reference date of April 1st, 2021, we have an assessed value of $1,048,000. The parcel use is surface parking. The zoning is M1. We have a land area of 29,379 square feet and an outdoor parking stall count of 97. Our recommendation is to maintain the 2023 assessed value, and this has been based on the income approach. On page 2 at the top, we have an overhead aerial view of the subject property on William Avenue between Allen to the west and Adelaide Street to the east. At the bottom of page 2 is an aerial view of the subject property which is located in the Centennial neighborhood. Page 3, we have a few street view photos of the subject property from a few different angles. At the top, we're in front of the parking lot. The middle, we're approaching the subject parking lot. And at the bottom, we're passing the subject property on William. Page 4, we have requests for information. And below that, subject sales history, which there are no recent sales. On page 5 is our market income summary. So we have a stall count of 97. We've applied a monthly net unit rent of $45 per stall, giving an annual net rent of $52,380. And we've applied an overall cap rate of 5%, giving an estimated value of $1,048,000. On page 6 are the comparable properties. This information has been obtained directly from the 2020 income and expense mailers that we received from the owners of these properties. The stabilized net operating income, the last column, is net operating income per stall per month, divided by the number of stalls divided by 12 months. Most of these properties are in close proximity to the subject property. In fact, most are within 1 kilometer of the subject property. Most comparables are located west of Main Street, which is similar to the subject property. And we feel that the value that we've applied of $45 per stall per month is fair and reasonable and is supported by these comparable properties. On page 7, we have our capitalization rate chart. This page is general cap rate information based on market trend reports. There's not a specific cap rate category for parking lots. Below are cap rates presented for properties with improvements, which depreciate over time. When you look at these cap rates, we feel that the 5% cap rate our model has applied is reasonable when we have improved properties with cap rates at 5% or below. On page 8, we have our municipal assessment excerpts. Pages 9 through 19 are the return 2020 income and expense mailers that we've received from the owners of the subject property. And pages 20, 21 are the actual rental rates reported from the website of the subject property. We see a monthly rent of $152.25 per stall, as well as some casual revenue here. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
I do. Mr. Ducharme, have you looked at the highest and best use of this property?
Yes.
Okay, and you've determined it to be surface parking, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so in terms of the value that you put on this property, which is based on an income approach, there is always an alternative to put land sales, correct?
Correct.
So in this case, what has happened is that the income approach has exceeded the land value, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So is that approach, is that simply a model decision, or is an assessor actually making that decision?
It'd be the model makes that decision.
Okay, so the model is actually analyzing the highest and best use of this property.
Well, obviously the assessor would have the final say, right? But that's what it suggests.
But you haven't overridden the model in this case.
No.
Okay. And okay. Okay. Now, in terms of the other parameters here, this is simply the model adjusting the values, and you've done nothing else to override these values, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson, do you have any questions?
I just have a quick question. You used a 5% cap rate using the income approach instead of, say, a 4.5. Are there a lot of monthly parkers or, under the contracts, or is it like attached to a building where there's a lot of, revenue coming, like because of the relationship between the building and the parking lot?
I'm not
Just in terms of the consistency of the revenue.
In regards to why it's a 5% cap rate,
Yeah.
or I'm not sure exactly why that was determined by the model to be 5% versus 4.5.
Okay,
In
and
this
just,
case,
okay. And then the land is 29,379. Did you see other development potential for that, given that it's 29,000 square feet?
it is a large lot size property. However, our model indicates that the value is the highest and best use is the income in this case. And I didn't look further into trying to find the highest and best use that would suit this location.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Ms. Nisbet, any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I have a question related to the stall count. You used 97 as your stall count. I'm looking at the I&E. It reports 91 stalls. Did you inspect the property to determine the number of stalls?
No, I have not inspected, and you'll note on the website they actually have 95. So that's something noted.
Yet another number.
Yeah, so it's something that I've made note of for the future.
Okay, so the website advertising the parking lot says 95. They report 91 and you use 97. Do you have plans to verify the number?
Yes, we have plans to verify it in the near future. Yes.
And when was it last inspected to determine the number? Do you know?
I believe it was the last cycle.
Okay.
Last cycle, yeah.
Okay, so the 97 reflects the number from the inspection at the last cycle?
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, I too had a question on the stall count because I see everybody's using different amounts. I have had the opportunity of looking at Mr. Navarro, who's indicated 84 in his workup, which seems low. And I noticed what Ms. Nisbet had just referred to, that the mailer indicated 91 spots and the city had 97. So, and you indicate that the sign itself for the parking lot says 95. So if we're valued on an income basis, and we really have to know the stall count. So that gives us a bit of a difficulty. So Mr. Ducharme, you haven't satisfied yourself. So what do we do? What do you suggest we do in this case?
Whatever would be fair for. I don't know. I don't know what to say for the stall count. I believe this last cycle was inspected. I'm not sure if Mr. Navarro was there at that time. I know in some cases when Lindsay was around, they were, but I'm not sure what. I haven't confirmed the stall count in this case.
Okay, yeah, and I got to tell you, I remember Lindsay, and she was very, very good at counting stalls, and that very often was a great contention when we had heard her in the past. But I'm going to just suggest in the future that where there is a discrepancy in stall counts, that you should come here prepared so you can give us evidence based on your own knowledge, because you're the only person sworn in here, and we can't really rely on conjecture from previous cycles because things could change. We don't know. So I just suggest for the future, Mr. Ducharme, that you come better prepared for that, because otherwise it makes it difficult for us if we're doing it on an income basis when we have to count the stall. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. So, Mr. Navarro, you can go ahead with your.
Okay. This is 365 William Avenue, and you can see the assessment summary there. Mr. Chair, I will note that there is an error there, and you can see the on page 4 that I was out there in August of 2022. I inspected the lot. There are in fact 97 stalls there. On page 7, you can see the property land and improvement description, where I say where I talk about the dimensions of the property and the zoning, the neighborhood that it's in, which is the Centennial neighborhood, and 97 surface parking stalls. So that is indeed what I found in August. On page 11, you can see the parking map. This is the stratification that the city of Winnipeg uses. You can see the green areas that represent basically the downtown of Winnipeg. The yellow areas are outside of the downtown. Typically, that is why they have lower net stall rates per month. And also, they would have lower capitalization rates because they are outside of the downtown. The next page over, on page 12, you can see the NCA. Again, I've highlighted in yellow, NCA 102, that it pertains to the Centennial neighborhood. And the rates for that neighborhood or that area range between 31.50 and 58.50. I believe the city is at 45. Okay. And so we are lower than that. We are at actually 35.71. So we've gone through 3 years of numbers on this property. This property is a basic parking lot. It's not, it is electrified. No, it is not electrified, actually. It's paved. It has no security. It's managed by a third party, but it's not under a lease agreement. So in these cases where the property is managed by the property manager, being an Impark or Indigo, one of those companies, we can typically get the income and expenses from these parking lots and come up with a value simply because we're working our way from a gross to a net, very much like an apartment valuation. So what we've looked at here is 2018, 2019, and 2020. We've averaged them out and stabilized the numbers. So we have an effective gross income of 118,681. And you can see in the last year, which is 2020, the substantial income drop between 2019 and 2020. So we've stabilized it slightly higher than the 2020 value. And that allows for recognition of the property going forward and as a result of the pandemic. So this particular property is servicing Red River College mainly. There are probably some employers in that area, and there may be some, but the bulk of the servicing is for Red River College. So in terms of insurance, we stabilized at 1,013, professional legal fees at 3,917, waste and snow removal at 20,880, and real estate taxes would be the most recent year at 34,456. Total expenses are 77,112. That is an expense ratio of 65%. That is quite high, but that is recognizing that the gross incomes fell substantially. In terms of the capitalization rate, we've put a 5.25 capitalization rate. Typically within the best areas of the downtown, we'll stick to a 5% capitalization rate. As we get outside of those better areas of the downtown, we typically put a 5.25 capitalization rate on this. And this is enough. It is outside of the downtown, so that is recognizing that it would have it wouldn't have the appeal that a parking lot in the downtown would have. So it would achieve a lower land value and lower income value. So we are looking at an end value of 791, 790, or 792,000 rounded. Now, in terms of the supplementary materials that we've provided all 3 years that we've looked at here in terms of the income and expenses that we analyzed. And we've also provided our parking study. And so starting on page 3 of the parking study, you can see how we've stratified the downtown, and it is essentially based on zoning. So we have a slightly different outlook than the city of Winnipeg does. There's also this stratification on page 4, which notes the downtown north, the West Exchange, East Exchange, and South Downtown. This is more a look at how parking providers actually stratify the downtown. Now, in terms of parking rates, we've put them together in several charts here. You can see on page 6, 7, the West Exchange, the East Exchange, the North Downtown, and South Downtown parking rates. Now, I will note that these are a significant number of parking rates and parking information. What I will say about these is, again, they are just there for information, and they are also gross rates. So keep in mind that all gross rates have to be netted when it comes to parking, because parking is typically gross. So what you see coming from the city is a net charge, and sometimes we follow that where we have no information. We apply a net charge based on the information that we're looking at. However, parking rate charges, the parking rates that you pay at any parking lot are gross, they're not net. So they have to be netted through some type of analysis and process. In terms of the management structures, there are typically several types of agreements. So there are lease agreements, which I've mentioned, and this is a situation where the parking provider is actually buying the income stream of that property. Now, that is also a telltale sign of how highest and best use should be looked at, because they are essentially looking at the income value in terms of buying that income stream. Now, there are also contract agreements which have certain stipulations. Ours would probably be viewed as a type of contract agreement / management agreement, where they're paying a lot of the fees ahead of utilities, all of those things, and then they are charging back those charges to the owner. So that is different than a lease agreement. A lease agreement, the parking provider is simply paying a rent. Hypothetically, say they're paying them $10,000 a month. Every month, no matter what happens with the performance of the parking lot, it's $10,000. They're taking the risk of buying that income stream, and sometimes they profit from it, and sometimes they don't. In terms of operations, on page 11 of the study, you can see that typical operating costs are wages, professional fees, insurance, supplies, license and permits, utilities, management and administration, repair and maintenance, cleaning and snow removal, realty taxes. When it comes to surface parking lots, the typical fees that you will see are the insurance cost. There will be some administrative / management charges. There will be some utility charges if the site is electrified. The most typical expense that you will see in there is the waste and snow removal, and you may see some repair and maintenance as well. For surface parking lots, you typically won't see things like, for example, supplies, uniform licenses, and security. Those types of things tend to be more common in parkades, but they sometimes are seen in certain downtown parking lots. And of course, every parking lot has a realty tax or business assessment taxes, which we also include in there. Lastly, or next page, we can see that expense ratios are ranging quite a bit. So we've looked at a few properties here, and the expense ratios are ranging between 40% and 82%. And the median is 49.6, the average is 56.4. So this cycle really saw a change in terms of the expense ratios. And as I mentioned earlier, that is a direct result of gross incomes falling on these parking lots. So as the gross incomes are falling, the expenses are essentially staying fairly static. So these expense ratios are going up. Now, for last cycle, the expenses were ranging between 40 and 45%. And in some cases, I still use 45% for some parking lots where I can see that, you know, there is a closeness to the previous cycle. But there are points where you have to actually acknowledge that the expense ratios have gone up. Now, in terms of comparable properties, we've also taken a snippet out of the assessment department's information here. And you can see some of the stabilized net operating incomes that they've reported on. On the next page, we talk about office capitalization rates. So there has to be some acknowledgement that there is a relationship, an inherent relationship between office tenancies and parking. And in that sense, parking goes the way of office tenancies. So if office tenancies are suffering, parking is suffering. Really, downtown parking is there essentially to suit or meet the demands of office tenancies. So it's no surprise that parking incomes fell so drastically at the beginning of 2020 and continuing on to even today. That's a direct result of office tenancies and that move of the workforce from downtown to, I guess, home-based operations. So most of us have seen that and most of us are aware of that. In fact, we have two panel members right now who are not here and essentially working from home today. So it's a reflection of the times. And it's something that still hasn't gone away in terms of the office tenancies. It's still there. So obviously it still has an effect on the parking question. And we are in contact with parking providers. We are speaking to them. And, at some point they would have told us, oh, we've hit the point where we can kind of rebounded. Well, that hasn't happened. So if the assessment department is trying to say that it was a small event, well, then it's been a very small extended event. And it's not small because when you look at parking incomes falling by 50%, that's not small. And lastly, on page 13, we start to get into the issue of highest and best use. So all properties are typically valued at highest and best use unless there are regulations that prescribe that they are not to be valued on highest and best use. And the most common example of that is farm use value. So that is where farm use occurs inside, for example, the city of Winnipeg. In order to protect that farming activity, typically the farm use is applied and the land rates that are applied to the land are not reflective of highest and best use. They're reflective of something else much, much lower. So that is an example of where the regulated value actually overrides the highest and best use. But there are not typically very many examples of that. So as I said, we tend to value on highest and best use. And what is highest and best use? Well, it's the highest and maximally productive use. I mean, there isn't an example of it on page 13, I believe. So I won't read into it, but On page 14, you can see that there are requirements, both under the appraisal side and the assessment side. So mass appraisal in the highlighted text there begins with the assigning properties to use classes or strata based on highest and best use, which normally equates to current use. Some statutes require that property be valued for ad valorem tax purposes at current use, regardless of highest and best use. Zoning and land use controls normally dictate highest and best use of vacant land. In the absence of such restrictions, the assessor must determine the highest and best use of the land by analyzing 4 components: legally permissible, physically possible, appropriately supported, and financially feasible, thereby resulting in the highest value. Now, the onus is on the assessor to prove that the assessment is correct. It is not on the appellant. However, we also conduct this exercise, and we look at whether it is physically possible to do something with this parcel. Obviously, is it legally permissible? There would be many permissible uses because it has a very flexible zoning. CMU is flexible zoning. Financially feasible, that's where we get into some gray areas. Cost, benefit, risk, sales transactions. And the most important one is the yield, project value, sales transactions. What produces the highest value at this point, and what is financially feasible. And at this point, because there is, I'm not saying that something is not possible, because you have to be looking at these things correctly. Physically possible is different than whether it's financially feasible to put something there. Is there a market for it? And in this situation, and in most of the situations that we're going to be looking at today, we would have to say that no, it's a parking lot because it's a parking lot at this point. And parking lot is a transitional use, but transitional uses can sometimes remain in place for decades. So one thing that we always ask ourselves is, what is the imminent horizon for development? And in this case, we don't know. So it's definitely more than 5 years. And is it more than 10 years? I would say that this property is likely to remain a parking lot for the imminent future and even down the road, possibly even 10 years. So in terms of how we determine the highest and best use of this property, it's going through this exercise. And what the assessor has said to me is that the model is basically looking at a land value, and that's a base land value, and determining which is the higher of the two. I do not think, for any reasons, that the model has the ability, unless it's an AI model that can analyze in that way. Artificial intelligence, if anybody didn't catch that, to be able to analyze these different points. This is something that has to be done by the assessor. And I would say at this point that the assessor has stated that they haven't done this. This is something that the model did. So this is the reason that we make the decisions we do when it comes to parking valuation. Now, I believe I've gone over the value and the evidence that I've submitted. So I will ask the chair that what I've just presented in terms of the parking study will apply to the following appeals as well.
Absolutely. We heard it once, and I can indicate, Mr. Navarro, we have good memories, and
okay.
Thank you for your presentation.
I'm open for questions now.
Mr. Ducharme, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson, do you have any questions?
Just a really quick question. You've indicated that you feel the highest and best use in this case is the parking. I'm just trying to get a sense of, and you related it to Red River Community College, like it's one of the primary lots for that. And then looking at the rate schedule in the back, they also have monthly parking. Do you have a sense of whether this lot is primarily like a large number of monthly users, or whether it's mostly this casual type daily and hourly?
Well, they have both, but I would
Yeah.
say that monthly is likely the most. So it operates during the school day,
Okay,
and that's where most of the demand for it would come from. So, and that also speaks to why it fell so much. We are. Again, we are of the opinion that we have to recognize this situation. So
it's kind of like a high percentage is monthly, but because of COVID, there was a significant impact on that because obviously people weren't going to school.
right. So if you look at the location of this property,
Right.
you can see that it's in the Centennial neighborhood, which is effectively a residential neighborhood. There is some commercial activity in there, but not enough to really warrant anything else. Again, we looked at, for example, multi-residential housing at this point, but I mean, there's a lot of multi-residential housing coming in. And in this area, because it's in this area, I'm not putting down this neighborhood. I think it's a lovely neighborhood. There isn't as much demand for it. If housing were to be built here, it would have to be government stepping in to build housing there. And that is something aside from the market. So we wouldn't even look at that as, you know, demand coming from the market itself. It's if government puts its finger into it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Nisbet, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. This is with regard to your workup on page
13?
Sorry, yep, 13. Sorry, took me a minute to find it. I appreciate that you did stabilize the gross rent. I can't get my math to work, so how did you stabilize it? It stabilized at 118.
Yeah, it's not an average. It's not an average. It's not a weighted average. I simply tried to acknowledge that there had to be some type of recognition of the reduction in the income, but I didn't want to go anywhere near the actual 19 or 2020 value. So I chose something closer to 120. In that sense, it's more of a thumb approach, you know, kind of just. But again, what I didn't want to do is simply say that no, it should be at 90,000. Because we are looking in the future, and even though things haven't recovered to the point that we're even at 118,681, we can note that at some point in the future, this probably will start to go up. However, we are looking at a specific time in history, and that is the reason why we have assessment cycles. Otherwise, we wouldn't have assessment cycles. We would have year-to-year assessment cycles or you know, assessment cycles that are 10 years long. The reason is that we're trying to capture changes in the marketplace. And typically the changes in the marketplace are going like that in an upward trajectory constantly, but sometimes they have dips. And that is, you know, again, one of the reasons for having a 2-year cycle. You recall that we used to actually have a 4-year cycle, but because changes in the market occurred again, people started advocating for a shorter cycle, and that's what ended up happening. Now we have a shorter cycle, and people would probably be advocating for an even shorter cycle at this point. But what the legislation tries to do is allow the ability to actually capture the changes in the market, and so I think that's also what I'm following is that you know, sometimes there are dips in the market, and this just happened to have been one of those, and we don't think it's a small event. It's had broad effects throughout our society and our lives, so I don't know how you can say that it's just a small event.
No, and I appreciate that. I was just trying to get to the math of your workup.
Yeah, it's just one of those, but at the same time, we're nowhere near the 90,000.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So, Mr. Navarro, first of all, I want to thank you for clearing up for us the number of stalls. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. And secondly, you indicated this parking lot is largely used by students at Red River. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I suggest to you then that it wouldn't be affected by as much as maybe a parking lot in a normal office location, because students at Red River have to keep on going. It's mostly on site training that they have. It's a technical school, not so much as a book learning school. Would you agree?
Well, Mr. Diamond, if that were the case, then we would see a change in the income coming in, and that's not the case. So,
Well, okay, that's why I'm wondering about income coming in, which is reported on paper.
well, I mean, look, it's a reflection of students, probably, of also people who work at Red River College, administrative staff, and I'm sure there's even people from the city of Winnipeg that may park there. So there is.
Not just them at the Vero, but I know that they have things like cooking school. You're not cooking at home. You're cooking on site.
Yeah.
They do things that require tools and on-site training. It's not like taking a science course where you can zoom in on your computer and hear a lecture.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you recognize that? Okay. The second thing I'm asking you is, and maybe I feel dense because I don't get it. So I'm looking at your work up on page 13, and I see that you show stabilized an annual income of under 118,681. It looks like, and you take off all the expenses, which I see. You take off insurance and professional fees and snow removal, which of course has to be done, and real estate taxes, and you get a total of 77,112, and then you take 65% of that off. And I'm just wondering, if all expenses have come off, where did this extra 65% of expenses come from? Because I don't follow it. Where are they? Like, what expenses are those?
Okay, so
I'm sorry, because if I don't get it, I feel really stupid. But I just, so maybe you can clarify that for me.
Okay, so I don't know. I'll ask you a question, Mr. Diamond, if you've ever been present during apartment appeals.
Of course I have.
Okay, so this is exactly the same methodology as we use in apartment valuations. So what the 77,112, if you divide that by the 118,681, that is the 65%. So the expenses are a ratio of the operating income.
I know, but so you had an operating income though. If I do my calculations correctly, you're going to end up with about $58,000 if you take about $60,000 off the 118. And if you have a $58,000 NOI, that would basically be higher than what the city has used in determining theirs. Theirs is only $52,380. So I'm just wondering how you reduce that NOI because if I look at the 118, I take off your expenses and I end up with about $58,000 there.
Okay, so so if you take 118,681 minus the 77,112, that gives you 41,569. That is the net operating income. So we're taking a gross income. Mr. Diamond, we're taking a gross income. Okay, right. We have an effective gross income of 118,681. Correct. We have operating expenses of 77,112. 118,681 minus 77,112 is 41,569. Now, the 65% is simply the expense ratio. It's not anything else. We're just looking at the percentage of the expenses according to the effective gross income.
Okay, that's fair, but I look at 118,688 and I reduce it by the amount of the expenses on the statement that it indicates, and I end up with not 41,529. I end up with 58,000. So I just wondering, where did the 41,569 come from?
Mr. Diamond, these are, I mean, these are calculations. I
May I-
don't, yeah.
Yeah, you can, please, if Mr. Elizabeth.
May I interject?
If you
Mr.
explain what's
Navarro,
going
Mr. Navarro, when you add up the insurance,
Yeah.
admin fee, waste and snow, and real estate taxes, the sum of that is 60,266.
Okay, so it's calculated something else here then.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which leaves then an NOI of 58,415.
58,415.
I think that's what you were getting at,
Yeah.
right, Mr. Diamond? Yeah.
It was Mr. Elizabeth, but I'm glad that you followed me because yes.
Yeah. Took me a bit, but I got it. So there is something awry with your table.
Okay. Okay, then there is no value dispute here.
No.
Yeah, we'll ask for confirmation here.
Okay. Okay, we'll proceed with the next matter then, which is unnumbered on Spence Street. And Mr. Ducharme, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you. The file number is 22-1634. Roll number is 120-913-02100. The address is Spence Street for the roll year 2023. With a reference date April 1st, 2021, we have an assessed value of $614,000. The parcel use is surface parking. The zoning is R2. Land area is 12,883 square feet, and we have an outdoor parking stall count of 40. The recommendation is to maintain the 2023 assessed value, which is based on the direct comparison approach. On page 2, at the top, we have an overhead aerial view of the subject property on Spence, which is also adjacent to St. Mary Avenue and in close proximity to Portage Avenue and Memorial Boulevard. On the bottom, we have a closer aerial view of the subject property at Spence and St. Mary Avenue. Top of page 3, another aerial view of the subject property from a different angle. And the middle of page 3, a street view photo of the subject property from St. Mary Avenue. And on the bottom of page 3, a street view photo of the subject property from Spence Street. Page 4 are the requests for information. Below that, the subject sales history. There was a sale September 19th, 2017 for $950,000. Our records indicate this sale was between unrelated parties. And this works out to $73.74 per square foot. And below that is the subject property land sale comparables chart. You'll note that for the subject property, we've applied a value of $47.66 per square foot, giving an assessed value of $614,000 rounded. Comparable 1 is a subject property as discussed. The remaining comparables I'll discuss in more detail on the following pages. On page 5 at the top is comparable 2, Colony Street. This comparable is in the same neighborhood, 103 West Broadway as a subject. We see the comparable highlighted in red, and we can see it's in close proximity to the subject, which has been circled in the same photo. This property sold in 2017 for $54.84 per square foot. There is a current permit with a declared construction value of $4,500,000 to construct a 6-story, 25-unit multifamily dwelling with garage parking on the main floor. Comparable 3 on Yonge Street. This comparable is in an adjacent neighborhood to the subject property, 104 Spence. We can see the comparable highlighted in red, and we see that it is in close proximity to the subject property, which has been circled. This comparable sold in 2017 for $62.55 per square foot. There are no current permit plans for this property and remains a parking lot. Page 6, comparable 4. In the top photo, the comparable has been circled in red. The subject property has been circled in blue. The top photo is representative of the comparable at the time of purchase. The comparable sold for $66.44 per square foot in 2016. And the bottom photo is representative of how the property looks today. Today's there's a 15-story building with commercial on the main floor, with the remainder of the floors being residential. This permit had a declared construction value of $22,600,000. The occupancy permit for this property was approved as of April 8th, 2021. The comparable land area is 15,006 square feet, which is close to the subject at 12,000, or not too far off from the subject's 12,883 square feet. The comparable is zoned the same as the subject, R2. On page 7, comparable 5, 198 Sherbrooke Street. This comparable is located in the same neighborhood as the subject property, 103 West Broadway. In the photo, the comparable is highlighted in red at the bottom left, and the subject property circled near the top right. The comparable property is similar in shape and size at 12,300 square feet to the comparable at 12,883. The comparable property sold for $53.44 per square foot, February 28, 2020. There are permits issued for this comparable with declared construction value of $7,200,000 to build a 5-story mixed-use residential building. The first floor, a covered parking lot with retail on the main, and floors 2 to 5 being residential. Based on these comparables presented, we feel the value of $47.66 per square foot that we applied to the subject property is fair. Page 8 are the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Pages 9 through 16 are the returned income and expense mailers we received back from the subject property. And on page 17, we see the actual rental rates that have been reported from the website of the subject property as of April 1st, 2021. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Ducharme, in this case, the city has used a land approach. So this is a case where the model has flipped to a land value because that is the higher value, correct?
It is a higher value, correct?
Okay. And your comparables 1 through 5 are all higher than what the model has done here. Now, were you able to find any values that actually supported your value, or the value that the model has suggested here?
Well, I think the properties I provided are supported for our model.
Okay. And just to be clear, you have not weighed the issue of highest and best use yourself. This is simply a decision the model made, correct?
Well, I think these comparables show that there is potential for investors that look at development of this property.
Okay.
See one just down the street.
Yeah.
Comparable for.
Now these comparables, and I would say Sherbrooke. What is Sherbrooke right now? I'm just saying it because Sherbrooke is further away from this property, right? This is just on the cusp of the downtown, whereas Sherbrooke is clearly outside of the downtown, right?
It is in the same neighborhood as the subject property though.
We could call it the same neighborhood, but really, I mean, there's a lot more activity in our location than there is on Sherbrooke. Would you not agree?
I think that's fair.
Okay. And again, just to make sure, you yourself did not conduct any type of highest and best use analysis, correct?
I didn't look at it if it's financially feasible. If that's what you're asking them.
So you know that this is a parking lot. It's providing parking on page 15 or 17 of your report. You even have the rates here for this stall. There is parking income coming through this property. So why was the parking income not considered?
Well, as a potential investor, would probably be looking at the development potential, not the income produced by the property.
I guess that's the highest and best use question. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Lisbeth, do you have any questions?
Just about the sale in 2017. There was a sale you noted at $950,000. It is your comparable number one.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I must have zoned out for a little minute, but did you indicate you looked into this sale? Is it a valid sale? Did it include other properties, or is it just
It did not include other parties. Our records indicate this is the parties are unrelated. So yes, it was looked into by our department, and it was deemed to be a valid sale, and it wasn't included in our analysis.
Okay, I guess my other question is, for it's in your comparable is selling at $73.74 a square foot. Your model uses $47.66 a square foot. Why such a large difference, or did you look into that?
I wasn't able to determine why the difference. No.
Okay, thank you. I have no additional questions.
Thank you, and I don't have any further questions. So, Mr. Navarro, you can proceed.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Spence Street, and it is 281 Spence Street Limited, Timber Creek Asset Management. On page 6, you can see the general location of the property, and again, this was also inspected, so 44 surface parking lots. You can see on page 8 the rates, the net rates that the city is applying for these neighborhoods. Now, I will ask you to look at page 6 again. There is the parking lot with the red X. Just directly north across the street is a building owned by Timber Creek. Also, the parent company that we call Timber Creek also owns the property across the street. So we spoke with them about this transaction, and well, we know it was a motivated sale. They were looking for additional parking. So they were redeveloping much of that property across the street. So that is the reason they paid a premium for it. So in any type of sale, we would also look at the motivation of the sale, whether there was any type of motivation that would have increased the price. In this case, we do believe that there was that motivation coming from the fact that they own the property across the street. So we valued this property on the income approach. And on page 11, you can see the parking lot comparables, Spence Street, Good Street, which is very close by as well, Balmoral, Victor, Young, Edwin Galt. Galt is much, much further away, but even Sherbrooke, which is farther away as well. So we've chosen a net rate per stall in this case because we didn't have the proper information here. And I'll get into why we couldn't use the income information that was supplied. So 40 should be 44 stalls. If the chair would allow me to calculate this out.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, so 44 stalls actually produces a net operating income of, or 44 stalls times $50 produces a net operating income of 26,400. By a cap rate of 5.25, the value is actually 502,857 or 503 rounded. Now, in the appendix, you can see the first few pages that there is no, there is a response, but not according to the information that the city has. They have filled out, I believe, the COVID questionnaire. On page 20, you will find the actual information that they have supplied here. So you can see at the bottom there is a highlighted red comment that says managed by a third party. However, there are operating expenses here that that are missing. For example, the big one would be the snow clearing and cleaning, and that would be the most typical one. Usually, if I don't see that, it's usually telling us that it's a lease agreement, but I'm not exactly 100% sure about this one. There is also the business taxes are missing, and also insurance. Those are also missing. So that is the reason for using a more simplified net approach using some of the city's own information. So that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ducharme, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davison, do you have any questions?
I have a couple questions. I'm looking at your page 11, your comparable properties that you use to, get at your NOI. I see that you essentially use the median of your 9 comps to use the 4961, multiplying by the number of stalls.
Yeah.
But I'm noting that Victor really looks like an outlier. It's got 125 stall count with a star, and it's $85.24, which is, and even Young Street is 42, which is in the stall count, but the stabilized NOI per stall per month is 114. So obviously those are impacting your use of the median.
So I mean, you can see Spence Street, Good Street, Balmoral right there. They're hovering around. I mean, if you were to take an average, they would be close to where we ended up. So, and those would be the closest locations. So I believe Spence Street is actually.
So rather than thinking about it as a medium, and if you just looked at those 3, which you're almost suggesting are the best comps, it's in that range you're talking about.
Yeah. And there is some consistency as you get outside of the downtown, no matter where you are in the outside of the downtown. So whether you're even on the north side of the downtown or the south side or the west side, or you're going to see some consistency in the rates simply because you're just outside of the downtown. So there's less demand for parking. And the rates will be lower in general.
Okay, and I just had one last question. in terms of you've used a cap rate of 5.25, and I'm wondering, you said that the sale price reflects a motivated seller because they wanted more parking lot because they own a building across the street.
Yeah.
At least I think that's what you said. So what's the stability of this rental? Like, it sounds like the risk may not be as great. Like, it sounds more like a secure source of revenue.
Yeah, typically what we will do is as you get outside of the downtown, we just like the city, I mean, they have that one consistent 4.5% cap rate through most of the downtown. We apply a very similar logic as once you get outside of the downtown, you should have. You're making a valid point. I mean, but we wouldn't go below 5 to begin with.
Okay, but you feel the stability of the revenue, given that you indicated
For sure.
it wasn't part
sure.
for that building, does reduce
For
the
sure. I mean,
risk.
there would be less risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nisbet, any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Navarro, I guess I have a couple. First of all, would you not agree that if they paid $950,000 for it, which is much above your valuation on how you calculated it on a business, I guess, point of view, that they must see some potential for development in it in the future? I mean, they paid basically double what you're asking us to value it for now, or almost double. Wouldn't the fact that they paid that show that the development potential in that property?
So one of the more important things that we do when we value a property, and especially if we're using the sales comparison approach, is that we have to adjust those sales for certain things. And one of the more important ones is whether the sale was actually motivated. So if the owner is telling us that they paid more for it because they needed it, then that would tell us that the sale was motivated. So that is a motivated sale. I think most appraisers would look at that and say, okay, so maybe we shouldn't look at this sale with the same degree or the same lenses as had this property been bought in the open market and marketed and all of those things, which is another one of those things that we look at when there is potential for a sale. Was this on the open market? I don't actually think it was. I think they just approached the owner and said, here's some money, please give us this lot. And so I'm not sure that it meets that criteria of being, it may be an arm's length transaction from the assessor's point of view, and we may even call it an arm's length because there was an exchange of money, bada bing, but whether it was, a market transaction is a different story.
Okay, so I guess my next question is, I'm looking at the statement that is both on your workup and also on the assessor's evidence, and it shows an NOI of $36,870.09. That's operating income. And Timber Creek's a pretty sophisticated company. They trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange, so I'm assuming that they should probably know what they're doing when they fill out reports, and they know what NOI is. So I think that evidence shows that that NOI would actually evaluate the property higher. It's much higher than the NOI you've worked out at $50 a stall. It appears they're getting more than that.
Yeah, that does show a net operating income of $38.70. But I think if you go back to my original comments that I made about this, is that I wasn't sure whether this was a lease agreement or whatever. So it does say managed by a third party. So one of the problems with making that type of statement is that you can say that is the net operating income. But what's the proof there? That could just be the rental that they receive from if somebody purchased this income stream. What's missing here is the expenses. And so I have no clear idea of how that is being, how it ends up at 36,870. So what I'm trying to say here is I don't know if this is them being managed or them actually giving an operator an income stream or letting them buy it and then receiving a rent back on that. And again, during these times, there was, if you were, for example, leasing a parking lot from an owner, and you agreed prior to the pandemic to pay them $10,000 a month until the end of the lease, it doesn't matter what happened during COVID, you're still getting $10,000 a month. However, is that a reflection of actually what's happening in the parking lot in terms of the income and expenses? It just had too many question marks, and that's why I didn't use it. And that's why I defaulted to that market approach.
Okay, that's fair, Mr. Rivera, but you're asking us, though, to, in spite of looking at evidence that's clear on the face of it, to use your conjecture that you're not sure what's going on here, and ask us to lower the assessment on the basis of your conjecture, in spite of the fact that we see numbers that are from a sophisticated company that would have to report its financial statements every 3 months because it trades in the Toronto Stock Exchange. And I don't know if that's reasonable for us to have to do that based on your conjecture because you don't know. If you did know and you are sworn to give evidence, and I know you would not mislead us on purpose, but looking at that, I don't know if you're able to tell us unequivocally that those numbers are incorrect. I mean, it's here right.
I can't, Mr. Chair. And if you make the decision that this is good enough evidence, then I'm fine by that.
Yeah, well, unless you could refute it, and I know you can't. You've already indicated that you can for sure. So you're using conjecture. So I have a difficulty with that. I just have to tell you. Okay, well, thank you. Okay, well, let's proceed with the next matter then, which is 425 Gertrude. Mr. Ducharme, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. File number is 22-2531. Roll number is 120-312-07100. The address is 425 Gertrude. For the roll year 2023 with a reference date April 1st, 2021. We have an assessed value of $1,113,000. Parcel use is service parking. Zoning is residential multifamily. We have a land area of 30,002 square feet. Outdoor parking stall count of 94. Recommendation to maintain the 2023 assessed value. This is based on the direct comparison approach. On page 2. Top photo is an overhead photo of the subject property located at 425 Gertrude with Wardlaw Avenue to the north, Osborne Street just to the west. You can see the subject property is also in close proximity to Donald Street, the Southwest Transit Corridor to the east, as well as Confusion Corner to the south and Osborne Village to the north. At the bottom of page 2, we have a couple of aerial photos of the subject property from a couple of different angles. From the photos, we can see that the property is a large sized lot at 30,002 square feet that could be developed. In fact, a larger sized lot than the property adjacent to it at 391 Gertrude, which is 26,048 square feet. On page 3, below are some street view photos of the subject property from Gertrude Street, driving west on Gertrude towards Osborne. Page 4, the requests for income information. Below that, the subject sales history. There are no recent sales history for the subject property. And below that, we have our subject property land sale comparables. Below this chart, you can see we have applied a value to the subject property of $37.10 per square foot. The comparables range from $34.35 per square foot to $51.23 $0.23 per square foot. And these are based on the sales of these comparable properties. On page 5 is comparable 1, 60 Adelaide Street. This comparable is located approximately 3 kilometers from the subject property. It sold October 2012 for $37.83 per square feet, which is close to the assessed value of the subject property at $37.10 per square feet. It's much smaller than the subject property at 13,217 square feet. And we can see it's an oddly shaped lot. Comparable 2, Notre Dame Avenue. This comparable is approximately 4.5 kilometers from the subject property. It's sold in April 2013 for $34.35. It's smaller than the subject property at 21,107 square feet. And we can see that it is similar in shape to the subject property. On page 6, comparable 3 at 221 Stradbrook. This comparable is located in the same neighborhood as the subject property, which is River Osborne. The property land area is similar in the land area to the subject property, though a little larger, being 35,616 square feet. The top photo is representative of the property when it sold in August of 2013 for $42.12 per square foot. And on the bottom is a photo. We can see that the property is being improved with an 18-story mixed-use apartment tower with a parkade. The declared construction value for this improvement was $29 million and was approved for occupancy effective May 5th, 2021. On comparables 4 and 5 are the same, 421 Glasgow. This comparable is located in an adjacent neighborhood to the subject property. It's located approximately 1 kilometer from the subject property. It sold August of 2012 for $38.42 per square foot. It was then sold again in August of 2013 for $51.23 per square feet. It's smaller than the subject property at 19,520 square feet. And we can see it's an oddly shaped lot. It's located at the edge of Red River. And this property currently remains undeveloped. Page 8, I provided a Google map indicating location of the subject property in comparison to the comparable properties. The furthest property from the subject being 60 Adelaide, which is approximately 3 kilometers from the subject. The closest comparable to the subject property is a comparable at 221 Stradbrook, about 1 kilometer away. And this would probably be the most comparable. It's most similar to the subject property due to its location, the land area, and the shape. Page 9, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Pages 10 and 11 is the income and expense mailer we received back from the owner of the property, which consisted of the COVID questionnaire only. Page 12, we have the actual rates reported for the subject property from its website. We see they're charging $110 per month with some casual income reported as well. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions for the assessor.
Ms. Davison, do you have any questions?
Just one question. Does this parking lot particularly service a building, an office, shopping, just general people?
No, not to my knowledge. That doesn't service any particular building, not to my knowledge.
Do you know who it would be primarily used by or for?
No, sorry.
Because they do
There's
have
a lot of, there are some
parking.
businesses in the area, but it's also surrounded by some residential areas as well. I mean, it's in between a number of, it's close to, as I mentioned, Osborne Village. It's close to Confusion Corner. It's close to Donald. There's a number of spots that people can get around from there.
And it's 30,000 square feet. So did you utilize this comparison approach because you saw development potential or for a different reason?
No, well, we believe it's the development potential is right now outweighing the income
Right.
potential,
But it was because of the development potential,
Yes.
probably. Okay,
yes.
thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Nisbet.
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Descharmes, so I noticed that according to your page number 1, you show that there's 94 parking stalls there. And so it's used as a parking lot, correct?
Yes,
And you haven't given us a workup of the value based on income.
no, I
Okay.
didn't feel it wasn't supportive of this land development in this
Okay.
case.
You know how long it's been utilized as a parking lot?
I don't know exactly how long, no.
So it could have been, I see that there's a date, it says effective year 1967. So that, it says year built. I know parking lots are not the buildings, but would that be likely when that became a parking lot?
I'm sorry?
I see that on your page number 1, it
Yeah.
says effective year built is 1967. So with that, I know it's not a building, it's a surface parking lot. But would that
Yes,
indicate when it became a parking lot?
I would have to assume so.
Okay, and if that's the
But I don't
case,
know, I don't know for certain.
I don't know either. I guess that's, but I want to try to get there because if it's been a parking lot since 1967, I'm just wondering how the model is able to think that it's anything other than a parking lot. I mean, that's a long time that it hasn't been developed.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I know we're in an unusual time where parking lots have definitely been hit hard by COVID and we're seeing that, but the land potential is still there. We feel.
Yeah, this is a different area too. It's not really downtown, so if it does have parking, it might not be affected as much as the downtown parking. I noticed a sign that you show with your report that's on the property itself shows 100 stalls, and you've got 94. Do you know if it is actually 94, or do you didn't look into it because you're just valuing it as a land?
The focus was more on just the land value because we didn't present an income approach.
Yeah. So if we don't if we don't agree that the best use is in fact land, you don't really have a value then for us. Right?
The lower,
I guess
the lower.
that's fine. Okay, and you don't know if there's 100 spots. Maybe Mr. Rivera will be able to clarify that for us. So thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Mr. Rivera, you can proceed.
Okay, so we don't disagree with the assessor's logic on this one. It's outside of the downtown, so there really shouldn't be parking here to begin with. First of all, there's street parking. So why pay for parking when it's free? And that's probably a reflection of the operating expenses that you see on page I believe it is page 12 of my report. So it's generating $15,978 of parking. And Mr. Chair, I don't think this parking lot has ever produced above 20,000 a year, the many years that I've actually looked at it. So this is one of those times where we can actually say that for some reason, this person is holding on to this parking lot for whatever reasons, but really this is a prime location for a development. Multi-residential, most likely, if it would allow. So we didn't have the sales that the assessor had. We looked at other areas to see what similar size parcels were selling for, and we came to an average of about 24.44. That's what we based it on. We had a value of $733,249. But getting back to the original logic of what the assessor was saying, yes, this is one of those clear-cut cases where the highest and best use is clearly not parking. there should, for all intents and purposes, be some type of multi-residential development here. So we are standing by our value, but we do agree with the assessor on the highest and best use argument. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sharp, any questions?
No, no questions, thank you.
Ms. Davidson, any questions?
I'm looking for a short answer, like in terms of the comparables you've used to get at your $24.43 square feet, because they're not the same as the assessor used. I mean, they're in Linden Woods, they're in New St. Vital, they're in Transcona, New St. Vital, like they're not even in the
No, they're not.
vicinity.
You know, we go with the sales that we have access to. So that often isn't the sales that they have access to.
No, I realize that.
So
But do you feel these are representative of this, like Gertrude and Linden Woods and
well, those are
quite
residential neighborhoods. And for example, the Stradbrook property that I saw on the assessor's comparables, again, that is on Stradbrook. This is more inside Gertrude. If you know the area, it's just north of Osborne, or sorry, east of Osborne. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're fronting the main street, you're going to pay a little bit more for it. Unfortunately, some of these sales they're just new to me altogether, and that's probably just a reflection of they get all of the information from the land titles office. So we go through other sources. So sometimes we don't have you know, these comparables to look at. However, what I would again say is that in some cases, you know, you may have smaller lots here. For example, the first comparable on Adelaide was 13,000. So we were trying to go for something that was similar in size, and the only one similar in size was this one here on River and Osborne, which is 35,616. That's at 42, but again, it's fronting Stradbrook, which is different than Gertrude. I don't know if it makes a big difference, but we were only looking at, for example, similarly sized parcels that would have a residential flavor to them. The assessors, you know, the assessors has suggested C2 community. I don't think C2 would be approved here. This would be a residential development.
I guess just from you know, comparables, like if it were a higher different use, meaning development of residential, like the nature of residential in Linden Woods and New St. Vital is quite different than the nature of residential in Gertrude and the type of multi-family and proximity to rail, or not rail lines, but the new bus corridors and
rapid transit.
And that's it. And downtown. Anyways, so what you're saying, it sounds like, is these were the best comps based, and your focus was on size.
Our focus was on size and also on zoning.
And zoning.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not suggesting C2 here. That there's no way that C2 would go here. This would be either mixed use or residential mixed use.
Which is the trend.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. Ms. Nisbet, any questions?
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
And I don't either. Thank you very much.
Oh, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there's some other points to discuss for this one. It's liability and classification as well.
Mr. Navarro, are you contesting classification?
No, we're confirming that. If we can have it confirmed, that would be great.
Okay. We will confirm that. We will confirm classification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, hang on. Unfortunately, SharePoint is not working like it was. I'm gonna give me a second here. Okay. Okay, we're next moving on to item 4. Zero Galt.
That was
I know this, Mr. Ducharme, that this is. Excuse me. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I noticed that you're seeking to increase the assessment, Mr. Navarro. Which that?
Mr. Chair, I believe that we had withdrawn this. I believe we had sent it into the city.
Okay, so still. So, but I can see that you did not file any material, so I was assuming that you were not contesting the increase that the city's seeking.
We were actually going to withdraw it.
Okay, so I guess
All
I
right.
take you back to again still. Withdrawing it means that you're not contesting the original assessment, but are you in agreement with the increase that the city's seeking, Mr. Navarro?
No, that is our reasoning for withdrawing. But as I understand, withdrawing simply stops the process right there. So
Yeah, I just see it's on our agenda, so I don't know. It's within. I don't have it as withdrawn. Mr. Ducharme, what's your position?
I could go through our in terms of the increase, it's upon the confirmation that.
Yeah, before doing that, before going through it, Mr. Navarro has indicated that he's withdrawn it, and he believes that brings the process to an end. And I'm asking what your position is regarding what Mr. Navarro's position is.
I was in the belief he was going to withdraw it as well.
Okay, so is the city still seeking an increase?
We will be issuing once we confirm. We will be issuing a supplemental. We will be seeking an increase. Yes.
Okay, so that's not being proceeded with today. Then is that correct?
I would agree.
so if you're seeking so if you're going to issue a supplementary assessment, then I think all we need to do is probably just confirm it.
Yeah. Well, you said it was been withdrawn, but I guess okay. So
yeah, either or.
The original assessment.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that this is a matter that I should discuss with the other panel members. I'm going to ask that we take a break so we can have that discussion, Mr. Kumar.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so for the record, we've indicated that the property at Galt has been withdrawn from today's docket. And so we're now prepared to proceed with the property on Kennedy Street. And Mr. Ducharme, when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. This file number is 22-2624. Roll number 120-936-72000. The address is on Kennedy Street. The postal use is surface parking. The zoning is M, multiple use. Land area is 6,037 square feet. We have an outdoor parking stall count of 24. Recommendation to maintain the 2023 assessed value using the direct comparison approach. We have some aerial photos of the subject property on Kennedy Street on page 2. At the top, we see the subject property on the west side of Kennedy with Graham to the north and St. Mary to the south, and it's located in the South Portage neighborhood. The middle photo, an overhead view of the subject property from an angle, and the bottom is a photo of the subject property directly overhead. On page 3, we see some street view photos of the subject property from some different angles. At the top is from Kennedy Street approaching the subject. The second photo from the top is also from Kennedy Street. The bottom 2 photos are of the subject property from the alley where the access point to the parking lot is. Page 4, we have some requests for information. Below that, the subject sales history. There is no sales history for the subject property. And below that is our subject property land sale comparables. Below this chart, we see we have applied a value of $98.06 per square foot to the subject property, giving an assessed value of $592,000. As you'll note, the subject property is a smaller lot at 6,037 square feet. So the most appropriate comparables from this chart would be the 4 smaller lots at the bottom of the chart. In particular, comparables 8, 9, and 10, which are located in the same neighborhood as the subject property. On page 5 is our subject property market income summary for the subject property. While we're not using this approach in our assessed value, we're showing this in that it supports the assessed value that we have given the subject property. We have using the income approach, there's a stall count of 24. We've applied a monthly net unit rent per stall of $92, same as the applicant. We have a net operating income of $26,496, and we've applied a cap rate of 4.50%, giving an estimated value of $589,000. On page 6 is a summary, which I just finished reviewing from the previous page. On page 7, you'll note that for the income approach, our department has used the same monthly rent as that of the applicant. The difference is we're using a cap rate 4.5, while the applicant is using a cap rate of 5%. Below is a cap rate chart of improved properties, where we're seeing improved properties that depreciate. Having a cap rate at or below 5%, we feel that the 4.5% cap rate that we've applied is more appropriate. On page 8 is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Pages 9 through 14 are the return 2020 income and expense mailers that we received back from the owners. And page 15 and 16 are the actual rates that were charged by the subject property, obtained from their website. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Navarro?
Yes. Again, here, it's the model that's deciding which approach to take.
The model is having a higher assessed value for the land,
Okay.
yes, for development.
And in terms of your property comparables, the first 2 that I look at on Bannatyne, you did say that the most comparable are the last 3, but those 2 occurring on the same date, did you check to see whether those were portfolio sales?
170 Bannatyne and
127.
yeah, those were a package sale. They're registered separately. Was not a multi-role sale.
Okay. And in terms of your most comparables, 78, 100, and 107, are any of those located within the shed? Carlton, maybe?
Yeah, Hargrave. Oh, you didn't mention that. Carlton. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And Gary, maybe?
Not certain.
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
That said, I believe the only issue is the capitalization rate. Now, I think those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davidson, do you have any questions?
I do have a question. You've used the direct comparison approach and you indicated because it has development potential.
well,
I know
It
the
would be-
model selects it, but
yeah, it would. The development potential obviously be limited, being a smaller lot size here. Yeah.
that's my question. It's a very small lot, but this is owned by the Winnipeg Clinic Holding Company. So isn't it in essence part of the Winnipeg Clinic that's mainly used for primarily almost totally used for parking by the doctors and staff within the clinic?
It is used by the Winnipeg Clinic for parking, yes.
So would they ever look at developing, selling off this lot for development potential as long as that medical facility or clinic is still there?
It's a good question. I'm not certain. They do have a larger lots as well nearby if they were to package them.
It's not a G, it's not like side by side like a land assembly though, right?
No. I agree that the development potential would be very limited due to the size of the lot.
So does that speak to, I understand the model generated, but that the income approach to value is more appropriate, given that it's essentially a parking lot for the clinic?
And that's why one of the reasons why I presented it
Mhm.
here today is it supports the land value, but it very well applies to this.
Is that why, unlike the other ones, you presented both approaches to value?
In this case, and there's some of the further ones.
Yeah, I noticed that, yeah,
I've also presented
Yeah,
both.
I saw that.
Because we feel it supports the land value as well.
Oh, so it was only for support to the comparison approach.
Generally, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but I
Okay.
mean, granted, the size of the lot here is a little difficult.
And just my really last quick question, I guess, given that it's used by the tenants or the owners within the building, like it must be pretty much no vacancy, like pretty much 100% used.
I couldn't speak fully for that, but I would imagine so.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all my questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Davidson. Ms. Nesbitt, do you have any questions?
No additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you, and I don't either. So thank you. So you can proceed, Mr. Navarro.
Yeah, I believe this is just called Kennedy Street. It doesn't have a number. It's 6,037 square feet, multiple use sector. In terms of the location, you can see the red star there. I believe you got on this issue, and I believe actually the Winnipeg Clinic actually owns the larger parking lot just to the south as well. So there would be the potential for a land assembly. However, we are looking at this as an individual lot at this point. Again, we went through the exercise of looking whether there was any demand right now for multi-residential or commercial development. And I think at this point, there's just enough already there. So we're not saying that there is imminent development potential at this point. So that is the reasoning for valuing the property at using the income approach. And as you know, on page 10, you can see the comparables that we can see there. They're taken primarily from the downtown. These are net rates, so we are looking at $92. Again, that is nowhere near the performance of the property. And, you know, again, that's a reflection of the, how would you call it? The drop off in visitors to the clinic. However, yeah, we still think that $92 is probably appropriate for this area. Capitalization rate of 5%. And we've come to a value of, I believe, 530,000 rounded.
Okay, thank you. That completes your evidence, Mr. Navarro?
Well, the rest of it is just the income and expenses that I believe the assessor also went over that. So I don't think we need to go over that again.
No, I don't think so. I think you both have our agreement insofar as NOI is concerned. It's a cap rate situation. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Ducharme, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davis, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Nisbet, any questions?
No questions.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I guess here you're asking us to basically use a 4.5% cap rate. The applicant's asking us to use a 5% cap rate. And that's really the essence of the application here. Can you tell me why we should use the 4.5 as opposed to the 5?
Well, when you look at, going back to my, capitalization charts to 7, when you look at, say, some of the improved properties, I'm looking at, multifamily in particular, where there are, cap rates, in the 20th percentile at 4.8, and other reports at 5, 4.75, for example. And these are properties that have improvements and that depreciate, whereas parking lots do not have any improvements, there's no improvements to depreciate on a parking lot. So we feel that this would be fair at 4.5, below what an improved property would have.
Okay. But the city does use 5 in other areas, like example, the property of William had a 5% cap rate.
I
So
think the first one I think we had was is further removed from downtown. Yes.
no, I understand. So you're saying because it's downtown, it deserves a 0.5% lower cap rate. That's your evidence?
Yeah, that would be part of it. Yes, mainly about in regards to the improved property of multifamily dwellings.
Okay, I know I went back to Mr. Ducharme when we're finished, but Mr. Navarro, I think this is essential here. And why should we use a 5% cap rate as opposed to 4.5 in your mind?
Well, we feel that, again, and I made this point earlier on, is that parking in the downtown has more of a relationship to office tenancies than it has to anything else. So, I mean, I suppose if I was in the assessor's shoes, I would probably point to the lowest cap rates available, which is coming from multifamily, but that's just not what the downtown. I mean, there is multifamily or multi-residential housing in the downtown. However, it's really office tenancies that drive everything in the downtown. So our cap rates have always been more reflective of office tenancies in the downtown. And that is why they're above 5 for the most part. We don't really go below 5. So that is our reasoning for it. In terms of multi-residential also, I think that the market downtown is somewhat saturated. There's a new development happening on Donald Street. There is the large artist REIT development on Main Street. Again, I tend to think that most of that market has been saturated, so I don't see really much need for further multi-residential in the downtown. There's been plenty of it, plenty of multi-residential development in general in the city of Winnipeg. Again, going back to this idea, this is related more so to office tenancies, and you know, the parking lots have suffered just like the office buildings have suffered. And that's why the cap rate is above 5.
Okay, thank you very much. And I asked you both because I noticed that some of the properties that we're dealing with later on are going to have the same issue. So I thought that would help the panel members arriving at a proper decision on that. So thank you. So we can now proceed then with unless other panel members have questions in that regard, I shouldn't.
I'd just like to have a comment maybe or a summation in regards to the applicant mentioning that the downtown being saturated with multi-residential. I'm not sure if the applicant's aware. 127 Valentine is just starting development of a 10-story building with a declared construction value of $21,500,000 on the permit. It's going to be a 10-story building with underground parking. The main level's commercial, second floor will be offices, and floor 3 through 10 will be apartments. So there is residential activity development occurring downtown.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deschamps. Okay, if everybody's finished, then we can proceed with our next property, which is the property at, sorry,
I was actually gonna make a summation as well.
go ahead, make your summation. I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Okay. Again, we have a situation here where we're trying to link the issue of parking and office. And that is the traditional way, I believe, that office tenancies are related to parking and parking is related to office tenancies. I'm not going to make any further comments beyond the issue of that. That is essentially what we're trying to say to the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now proceed then with 116 Edmonton Street. Mr. Deschamps, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you. The file number is 22-1164, roll number 120-935-90100. The address is 116 Edmonton Street. For the roll year 2023 with a reference date April 1st, 2021, we have an assessed value of $1,303,000. Parcel use is surface parking, zoning is multiple use. We have a land area of 13,299 square feet and an outdoor parking stall count of 44. Our recommendation is to maintain the 2023 assessed value using the direct comparison approach. On page 2, we have some aerial photos of the subject property. The top photo, we see the subject property at Edmonton Street with Broadway Avenue to the south and York Avenue to the north. This property is located in the South Portage neighborhood. At the bottom of page 2 is a closer overhead view of the subject property. Page 3 at the top, we have another aerial photo of the subject property. The access to this property is through the alley in the foreground here. The middle photo is approaching the subject property from Edmonton. And the bottom of the page is a street view photo of the subject property from Edmonton Street. On page 4 are the requests for income information. And below that, the subject sales history. This sale did include the property at 386 Broadway, which serves the tenants of this building. So this was multi-role. Below that is the subject property land sale comparables. Below that chart, you'll note that we've applied a value of $97.98 per square foot to the subject property. These comparables are in close proximity to the subject property, with comparables 5 and 7 on Hargrave Street being the closest. The comparables most similar in size to the subject property would be comparables 1 and 2. The mean sale price of the comparables is $105.74 per square foot, with a median of $98 per square foot. We feel the value of $97.98 per square foot that's being applied to the subject property is supported by the comparables and is fair. On page 5, we've included the income summary, which we've not used in our assessment valuation, but has been included to support the direct comparison approach. For a stall count of 44 with a monthly net unit rent of $92, we have an annual net rent of $48,576. We've applied a cap rate of 4.5%, giving an estimated value of $1,079,000. And below that are the comparable properties. These are the reported rental rates, which is in support of the $92 per stall that we've applied. Page 6, this is a capitalization rate chart, which has been previously discussed. I won't go into it again. Page 7, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Pages 8 through 19 are the 2020 income and expense mailers that we've received back from the owners. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Yes, I do. So you feel that this location would be good for a development?
It's a large enough size. The property is in a good location. And for those reasons, yes, I think it would be
okay. And can you tell me from your picture on picture 6, what is that beside the apartment? To the north,
Sorry, what page?
page 6, or sorry, just looking at my own. On, I believe you can capture it here on page 2, your picture above. You have the parcel in outlined in red. What is that right beside it?
Some sort of a hydro development, like, I don't know if it's a substation, I don't know what you would call it, but some sort of hydro
Substation.
substation.
Okay. And so, do you think that development of what multi-residential would be likely beside that?
I don't know. It's certainly not attractive above it,
Okay.
like adjacent to it.
Okay. And again, I'll ask you, have you actually done, this is just a decision of the model to go with the higher value, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you haven't actually weighed the highest and best use then?
Not in detail. No.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Davidson, any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt, any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Mr. Ducharme, can you repeat for me, please, where is the access to this lot?
It's through an alley in the back. I don't know if you can see on the page 3 at the top photo.
Okay,
There's near the bottom, I guess, of that photo. There's an alleyway. That's how you enter this parking lot, not from Edmonton Street.
okay, so you can't get to it from Edmonton. Would this lack of access off a main street, would that have an impact on its development potential?
It potentially could, yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay,
don't certainly.
okay. And just on the stall count, did you confirm the number of stalls? Did you inspect the property in any way, or is this just
I wasn't
what
able
was-
to. Yes, I wasn't
Okay.
able to inspect the property for this hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I don't think I have any further questions. So, Mr. Navarro, you can proceed.
Yeah. So again, this is 116 Edmonton Street. And you can see a picture of it on page 6. I didn't inspect this past summer, but I have inspected this in past years. The owner has also provided a detailed map of it, so we do believe that the 44 stall count is still there. On page 6, you can see the overhead picture. I'm just I believe that the access for this parcel actually is through Edmonton. I mean, I could be mistaken, but I thought I had accessed it through there. And there is a back lane, yes. But I believe access is through Edmonton. And you can see on the lower picture where I have, you can see the substation beside it. And you can see Edmonton Street going north. And I believe the back lane is how you access it. There is no direct access point right into the lot from Edmonton Street, so you do have to go through the back lane. But I think the bigger issue here is the substation that's located next to it. So I'm not sure that multi-residential development would, go here, but we determined the highest and best use to be the parking. If you turn to page 10, you can see how we valued this property. We've taken $90 at 12 months times 44 stalls, 47,520, cap rate of 5%. We get a value of $950,000. In terms of the additional materials, we've just provided the income and expenses that have been provided by the owner. You can see on the very last page of the report their profit and loss. So their revenues for that year were $68,057. Their expenses were $43,879, and their net operating income is $24,177.95. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ducharme, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, any questions?
No questions for me, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions either, so thank you. So we can now proceed with the property at 165 Fort. When you're ready, Mr. Ducharme.
Thank you. The file number is 22-1039. The roll number is 120-930-54500. The address 165 Fort Street. The roll year is 2023 with a reference date April 1st, 2021, with an assessed value of $1,004,000. Parcel use is surface parking. Zoning is multiple use. The land area is 10,247 square feet. And we have an outdoor parking stall count of 36. Recommendation is to maintain the 2023 assessed value based on the direct comparison approach. On page 2, we have some aerial photos of the subject property at 165 Fort Street, which is on the east side, with York Avenue to the south, St. Mary Avenue to the north. The bottom of page 2, a couple closer aerial views of the subject property from a couple different angles. And page 3, we have a few street view photos of the subject property from a few different angles. At the top, it's a street view photo approaching the subject property on Fort. The middle, a street view photo of the entrance to the subject property from Fort. And on the bottom is a street view photo from the alley at the back of the subject property. Page 4, we request for income information. Then we have our subject sales history, no recent sales. And below that, the subject property land sale comparables. For the subject property, we've applied a value of $97.98 per square foot to the subject property. The comparables provided are in close proximity to the subject property. The comparables most similar in size to the subject would be comparables 1 and 2. The mean sale price of the comparables is $105.74 with a median of $98 per square foot. And we feel that the value of $97.98 per square foot that's being applied is supported by the comparables and is fair. On page 5, we have our income summary, which we are presenting but have not used in our valuation. The stall count is 36. We've applied a monthly net unit rent of $92 per stall, giving a net operating income of $39,744. And we have an overall cap rate of 4.5%, giving an estimated value of $883,000 rounded. Page 6, our capitalization rate chart. Page 7, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Pages 8 through 11 are the returned 2020 income and expense mailers. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vera, any questions?
Again, this is the model taking the land value ahead of the income approach, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And again, you've done no additional, you've made no additional consideration to the highest and best use by yourself, correct?
Well, these the land sale comparables here support the value.
Okay. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, any questions?
Yeah, I just have one around your your comparables, like your rental rates, I'm looking at the 174th Street, sorry, on page 5. You're showing $63.93 at 174, and it only has 39 stalls, which is similar, and it's quite close. Yet you use the mean or the median, the mean at $92. And then when I look at Smith Street, it's at 7114 and has 60. So do you think that the median in this case is the best, or should we focus down? Like these are selected by model, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Like 4th Street 170 is 63.93, and it's almost the same stall count.
Yes, I can see that. I didn't look into it specific,
Okay,
that particular property.
all right. That was my only question. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair?
Thank you. And I don't have questions either. So Mr. Navarro, you can proceed.
Okay, 165 4th Street. And on page 6, you can see the general location of the property. It is between York and Graham on the east side of 4th Street. And it's used primarily by Wawanesa. In terms of additional income, it really doesn't generate too much additional income. It does have after hours parking there. The daily hours, it's restricted to I believe the employees of Wawanesa. However, it's never been a big income generator to begin with, simply because of its location. So you can see that the comments on page 7, so about the employees, on a base rate of $185 per stall per month, employees would pay $72.70 per month. So they are subsidized. However, the base rate was $185. However, in terms of the valuation of it, I can answer one of the questions that was stated before, is why take 92? Well, it's because we're looking at an extract or a sample rather than just an individual property. So yes, 174th Street is very close. It's very similar in size, $63.93. But what also has to be remembered is that we are only looking at the 2020 rates here. Whereas in the failed 365 William attempt, which was a very good attempt, except for the small error in it, that was trying to look at the parking in a proper way, where you were trying to look at more than 1 year. Okay, so that's the reason we're not that low, is because we're trying to rationalize more than 1 year here. So we've gone with 92, and that has given us a net operating income at $39,744, cap rate of 5. As I mentioned, this has never been the best income earner. In terms of its size, it could be developed. However, I don't see much demand for this property being developed in terms of a horizon for it. Not in the imminent future, not 10 years. It's been a parking lot for a very long time. So we see it as being less attractive than other parking lots, say, within the Shed district. This is just outside of the Shed. So we've given it a 5% capitalization rate. Again, just to mention, the best cap rates that are there are for the best locations, but really, I mean, we don't have any best locations here. Everything that we have is outside of the Shed. And for the most part, we really haven't appealed any parking lots inside the Shed. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ducharme, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Davis, any questions?
I have no questions either. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lisbon, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, and I guess the only question I have is, on this one is, it's a pretty nice property insofar as the location is concerned in the downtown area. Would you agree, Mr. Navarro?
I'd say that most of the surrounding is low-rise commercial. I can't see residential coming in here because I think the footprint is maybe rather small. I mean, it could be worked, but no, I tend to think that this property will remain a parking lot for quite a long time.
Okay, so because I just see its proximity to Broadway it's not that far off. Yeah, it's been a parking lot for quite a while. Okay, well, thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Okay.
Okay, that takes us to the last matter today, and that is the property at 209 Fort. So when you're ready, Mr. Ducharme.
Thank you. File number is 22-2317, roll number 120-930-48100. The address is 209 Fort Street for the roll year 2023 with a reference date April 1st, 2021. The unit assessed value of $592,000. Parcel use is surface parking. Zoning is multiple use. We have a land area of 6,044 square feet, outdoor parking stall count of 22, and a recommendation to maintain the 2023 assessed value using the direct comparison approach. Page 2, we have a few aerial photos of the subject property. The top photo, we see the subject property at 209 4th Street on the east side with St. Mary Avenue to the south and Graham to the north. This property is also located in the South Portage neighborhood. The bottom of page 2, we have a couple of closer aerial photos of the subject property from a couple of different angles. Page 3, we have a few street view photos of the subject property showing a few different angles. At the top is a photo approaching the subject property on Fort. The middle photo is a view of the subject entrance from 4th Street. And at the bottom is a view of subject property from the alley. Page 4 are requests for information. Below that is a subject sales history. There was a sale in 2015. This sale also included, it's the same ownership at 205 and 207 York. Below that, the subject property are land sale comparables. You'll note that we've applied a value of $98 per square foot to the subject property. The comparables provided are in close proximity to the subject property. The mean sale price of all the comparables is $105.74 with a median of $98 per square foot. And we feel that the value applied of $97.98 to the subject property is supported by the comparables and is fair. Page 5 is our income summary, which we've included as it's in support of the direct comparison approach. The stall count is 22 with a monthly net unit rent of $92, giving a net operating income of $24,288. We've applied a cap rate of 4.5%, giving an estimated value of $540,000. Page 6, we have our capitalization rate chart. Page 7, the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And pages 8 through 14 are the returned 2020 income and expense failures we received back. And that would conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
I do. It's again, this is the model, flipping the value to land.
Yes.
Okay. And have you inspected this lot?
I did not inspect it for this hearing. No.
Okay. And based on the size, you would agree that it's not a likely candidate for any type of high intensive development?
It is a small lot. It is the same ownership group at 205 and 207 York, so there may be potential there to combine those.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, any questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. What building is this? Like, what building is this associated
North
with?
American Lumber. I believe, it's a numbered group, but
Yeah.
I believe that the applicant might have a better idea, but I believe it's North American Lumber.
So is the parking lot then like a customer parking lot, like
The
and a
serves
staff
the
parking lot?
serves the building at 205 at 20
Nine.
either 205 or 206.
Oh. So it's not an office? Or?
Yeah, the one right at I guess if you look at page 2, the bottom, the building closest to St. Mary Avenue there.
Yeah, I
It
didn't
serves
tell
that
them
building.
anything, no. So it's not serving an office, it's serving, or is it?
Yes, it's mainly for those the tenants of that building.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nesbitt. Any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Sharp, I guess my only question is, I'm looking at your photo on page 3, the upper photo, and I see there's buildings on both sides. Are the owners of the properties on both sides the same owner as the owner of the lot that we're talking about today?
The owner would be like if on the bottom of page 3, it'd be to the left, that building.
Okay.
Like and then so I guess like the middle would be the building to the right as you're approaching it. It's a building we just passed.
Right. So the building to the right, though, is got a different ownership. This lot's associated with the building to the left only.
No, okay. I want to be clear. Like if you look at the middle photo, page 3 of my brief,
Yes.
this parking lot is the same ownership as the building on the right as you're entering.
Oh, on the right. Okay. And the left is another owner then.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's my question. Okay, Mr. Rivero.
Okay, so this is 209 4th Street. We're asking for a reduction to 481,000. I went at this one in the summertime. However, I have inspected this property in the past. At the time, there was 22 stalls there. I believe the owner has 28 stalls, but I believe that actually includes the stalls that are outside of the property itself. Next to it. So there is some room for additional parking there. I believe you can see it on picture 2. There is a car there. So there is room there for, I believe, 6 additional stalls. On the last page of the brief, you will see the rent roll for the parking. So it does serve that building, the tenancies of that building. We've determined the highest and best use to be parking, and we've taken from the same sample as the assessor. And again, we didn't downgrade this one in any way. I believe if you look at the income and expenses on it, the income and expenses are the net operating income is 14,376. You can see that on page 14. So we have a net operating income on page 10 of 24,288. That is taking a $92 per stall rate net. On page 12, you can see our summary on the income approach. We've used a 5% again, 480, 760 rounded to 481. And in the appendix, you can see the valuation, the income and expenses supplied by the owner and their COVID questionnaire and their rent roll. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Mr. Sharp, any questions?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Davis, any questions?
Just a quick one. You've used the 5%. You've explained why you've utilized the 5%, but you made a note that last cycle the city used a cap of 4.5%. So that stood last year, maybe you appealed, maybe you didn't, but you're saying it should be 5% this year, for all the reasons you told us
Absolutely.
earlier, right?
Absolutely. And, I don't doubt that we probably could have gone a little bit higher on this one because of the small size of the property, but we've left it at 5 just to be consistent with the others that we have.
Okay,
Yeah,
because when I look at your income approach and the city's income approach, really, you only differ on the cap by 0.5.
Yeah,
Okay, all
that
right,
has been the biggest issue is the cap rate.
and I guess the methodology.
Look, in the past, I think if you've been present during our parking valuations, 95% of the time, we were within a very close margin of net operating income at the model. And that was using gross stalls in our expense ratio study.
Mhm.
So more often than not, we were actually quite close. And that was applicable at that time simply because the parking rates were not being affected by anything.
Right.
Now we have to take a slightly different approach. It's forced us to look at other ways of valuing these properties. We didn't want to go as low as 63.
Mhm.
And that's why we've used a higher net operating income, but we've also reflected some of those issues in the capitalization rate. We don't think it should go below 5.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nesbitt, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Vera, I guess I just want to clarify because I'm looking at the last page and it does show 28 spots and you indicated you satisfied yourself that 6 of those spots are on adjacent property, correct?
Yes, I've actually been on this property in the past and that's how I found the 28 is that I found an additional 6 lying there on the other property, the adjacent property.
Okay, so there are only 22 spots on this property.
There are only 22 on this property.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And so basically it's just a cap rate situation if we don't go with a better use situation. And you indicated that you thought maybe because of the small size, maybe 4.5 might be a little bit low, so it could go higher. So how much at 4.75 or would you go to 5?
Well, I mean, that's realistically, I think I could have gone to 5.25 because I mean, we look at the previous example at 165 Port, it's double the size. But again, I just don't see any type of development coming into these properties, and that's why we've chosen the highest and best uses parking. Again, we've actually gone through that exercise of looking at other potential for these properties, whereas we're not relying on a mathematical model to make that decision. So our position is that 5%, because of the relationship with office tenancies, it has been affected. Regardless of the rental roll that you see there, you can see how the income fell off in 2020. And again, we're not reflecting that, we're reflecting a higher amount. So we are reflecting some of that risk in the capitalization rate.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you. So I guess that's the last question I have. So before closing, if either or both of you wish to make final summations, you can do so. Otherwise, just leave it with us and we'll give you the decisions as soon as we can. So do you have any comments? Do you have any summation?
No, I think I've already covered it. Thank you.
Okay.
No summation.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much. We've now then heard every item on the agenda today. We will endeavor to get you our decisions as soon as possible. And we thank you for your attendance and for all the information you provided us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
It would have been much better if that little glitch on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, it always is.
But I think you caught the points.